start recording for us, and she'll mute everybody at the same time, I think. Cool, and there that is. Okay, well, thanks everybody, and welcome to our second version of our Global Grants Workshop. We started these 2 years ago, really, as a kind of a pilot thing, and then last year really separated out the Grants Management Seminar from the Global Grants Workshop as a way to really focus on global grants for this one. If we tried to cover both the district and global grants in one Grants Management Seminar, that gets long, detailed, cumbersome, and scary, especially for those that just want to do district grants. So we developed this workshop to help you have a better feel for global grants and what needs to be done throughout the process to make your grant the best it can be and make it as easy as possible on yourself. I am going to share my screen here, and you should see the big one there, I think, I hope. And so this is our Grants Management Seminar. Introductions, I'm Kyle Helgen from the Prior Lake Rotary Club, and for another, let's see now, nearly 3 months, I'll be the District Rotary Foundation team leader. And Margie, do you want to introduce yourself, please?
I'm Margie Horning, and I'm from Stillwater Sunrise Rotary, and I'm the grants team leader. And I will be, unlike Kyle, I will be working with Ed Merrick, yes, next July 1st to carry on for another year.
Yep, you can't get rid of Margie that easily. We'll introduce you to a couple other people along the way here, but Kathy Hewitt is also here hosting the meeting in the background, and we'll go to some housekeeping items. Please keep yourself muted if you can, just because it just cuts down on distractions. And please try to keep your video on as much as possible as well, so we know that you are paying attention and all that and all those good things. If you have any questions along the way, go ahead and send any questions directly to me. If it's any technical issues, send them to Kathy. And we don't really have any poll questions, but we'll have some attendance things as well. So with that, along the way, there are several purposes for our Global Grants Workshop. We want to share the requirements of global grants so you can put together, as I said before, not only an acceptable grant, but the best possible grant. And we want to make the process as easy as possible for you. So we'll go through some of the global grants process to broaden your knowledge base. And lastly, the Rotary Foundation requires that a club be qualified to sponsor a grant. Now, technically you did that with the Grants Management Seminar, but because we've split them out into two with a global grant, it's a requirement for us to make sure that people are attending both the Grants Management Seminar and the Global Grants Workshop. So this will get you qualified to do a global grant for next year as well. Our agenda for today, there's a lot of bullet points on there, but some will be in more depth than others. But really what we want to do, we know that even if we had an 8-hour grants management seminar like they do in some areas of the world, you're not going to remember everything that comes out of it. And so we really want to hit the high points today, talk about everything that you should make sure to focus on, and then know along the way we can help you with different things as you have questions and go forward from that perspective. So while this list looks significant, it's kind of hitting the surface in each one of those things. Before we move on, I want to pause and do an attendance check for those that haven't entered their name and club in the box yet. So if you could do that in the chat box so we know you're here, that would be great. And while you do that, I'm not gonna, we'll come back to that in a second. All right, as you all do that, I want to touch on the global grant requirements because there are some. Obviously, one of the requirements in order to be qualified to do a global grant, and this is more of our district rule or enhanced because of the split between the grants management seminar and the global grants workshop. But you must have a club member, and frankly, in the global grant side of things, it must be one of the 3 people on the project team to attend a global grants workshop in addition to the grants management seminar. Your club has to be in good standing, which means that your Rotary International and district dues are up to date, and that you don't have any outstanding and delinquent reports on any other district or global grants. Doesn't mean you have to be finished with the project, just means that you have to be up to date on your reporting. And number 3, the memorandum of understanding, which is a Rotary Foundation document, and our district addendum has to be signed as well. One thing about that is because this is a grant for the 2021-22 Rotary year that starts July 1st, the signatures on those documents must be your 2021-22 president, so the person that is taking over as president on July 1st, and the president-elect that takes over on July 1st. So do not have your current president sign that document. Before we get too far into the meat of our discussion, I'd like to welcome next year's district governor, Kenny Closter, to give some welcome comments. Kenny.
Thank you, Kyle. And of course, you had to mention meat, and I'm looking at my clock going, okay, is it lunchtime yet? Yeah, well, now I'm in a dilemma. Do I do dinner or do I do supper? But anyway, thank you all very much for being here. Really, really appreciate the interest that you're taking in pursuing the global grants. Want to give a special shout out to Margie, my most special CPA. Margie, thank you very much for all that you do. I can say you're my most special CPA because my wife is a couple walls away, so she can't hear me say that. So thank you, Margie. A special thank you also to Kyle and to Ed, and as well as all the mentors that we have on the call today, and as well the ones who weren't able to make it. So lots of familiar names as I'm looking through the participant list here, lots of familiar faces as I scan the Zoom machine. Thank you again for being here. If there's anything that I can help out with, anything that I can do for you, please do not hesitate to ask. With that, it's enough of me. Kyle, back to you.
Thanks, Kenny. You emailed me earlier and said anything particular that I should say today, and I wasn't sure. I told you to talk about your lunch and dinner plans there. So
the sad part is, Kyle, I don't have plans. That's the problem. I need plans.
There you go. Thanks, Kenny. Well, during the grants management seminars, we talked about all of how the Rotary Foundation's areas of focus lead towards positive peace, which is the fulfillment of all needs in a society. We'll dive into the areas of focus and how they pertain to global grants a little later on, but we wanted to show this video first. So after viewing that video, I think you'll agree that as Rotarians, we have enormous opportunities to make a difference in the lives of people around the world. And global grants are one of the main tools that helps us create positive peace. But as you can imagine, the Rotary Foundation provides us with a list of requirements for global grants. These are also identified in the Rotary Foundation's Guide to Global Grants, which we sent previously, and we will highlight, or we'll send afterwards as well. But we wanted to highlight them now. Margie?
All right, thank you, Kyle. As you can imagine, Rotary International has a list of must-haves for each global grant. And first of all, you must have a long-term sustainable impact. Second, you would want to include activities that align with the goals of one of Rotary's areas of focus. And new last year is to have a minimum budget of $30,000, which includes new this year, 2021-22, a minimum club cash contribution of at least $10,715. And we'll talk a little bit more about that change in a little bit. And also it has to address an important need that is identified by the community itself. And of course, it has to strengthen the community's capacity to meet its own needs, because you're not going to be there for forever. Now, you want to qualify your club for global grants every year, which of course you're doing right now. So thank you for attending. And then actively involve the benefiting community in the project. So that would be the community in our case, in a foreign country. You have to partner with a club in another country. And sometimes that can be quite a challenge to get a club to, want to, or have the capacity, I guess, to really be a host partner with you. Then you would develop a project plan that includes a budget and financial management. So financial management is always an important part of any global grant. And measurement. You measure the project towards the outcome as you go along. You also want to stay up to date in reporting for all active grants, because if you're not actively reporting on a timely fashion, you could be blackballed by us as a district, or by, even worse, by RI. So for humanitarian projects, I think that one of the most important things is you must conduct a community assessment before, that's not after the application, but before applying, and include your results in the application. So because it's critical for a global grant, let's discuss planning for sustainability a little bit. For Rotary, sustainability can mean different things to different people, but we're dealing with Rotary. So for Rotary, sustainability means providing long-term solutions to community problems that community members themselves can support after the grant funding ends. We want global grants in our district anyway to make a lasting difference and to provide meaningful change in the people's lives. You start early. You can't suddenly add sustainability items at the end of the project. So be thinking about that as you're planning your project. And good management engages members. It supports meaningful service projects, and it has meaningful impact long after the grant is done. And global grants really show communities what we as Rotary can do. Well, let's dive a little deeper into how to make a sustainable impact using the graphic from the Rotary Foundation. Well, the first step, as we kind of talked about, is starting with the community. And because local participation is so doggone important to a project's success, Rotary requires local sponsors to conduct a community assessment. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later as well. Assessing your community's strengths, weaknesses, needs, and assets is an essential first step in planning an effective project. By taking the time to learn about your community, you can discover the best opportunities for service and maximize your club's ability to make an impact. The process of doing the assessment also helps you build those valuable relationships and encourages community members to participate in making, and more importantly, maintaining those improvements once the grant is done. An assessment not only helps you better understand the dynamics of the community, because every community is different, but allows you and your project's beneficiaries to make informed decisions about your service priorities. Before you start the assessment, consider what you specifically want to learn about your community. You may find a new way to address a known issue or give residents a chance to point out some overlooked challenges that we have no idea that they're there. While conducting an assessment, also be sure to manage expectations. Communities should understand the benefits and think about these wonderful benefits of partnering with Rotary and how that partnership requires that community's involvement, their contribution, and most importantly, their ownership. Conduct your community assessment before determining the project goals and the scope. In other words, the assessment should drive the project, not the other way around. Be open-minded. You may have a great idea, but your community may come back and say, you know, this is really more important to us than, or more needed than what you're thinking about. And also choose your participants wisely. If you're having trouble with a host club from the get-go, you probably know right away they may not be the best partner for you. So choose your participants and your contingency cooperating organizations with great care. Include often overlooked marginalized groups in the community. Consider yourself an outsider, because we don't know that community, we don't live there. And more, one important thing is we're kind of great at promising. Don't promise a project before you've actually made a decision and feel like it's really a virtual project you can do. The Global Grants Community Assessment Results Form would be completed and would be included in your grant application. And there's a document called Community Assessment Tools. Actually, there's quite a few documents on community assessment, but it's a great resource for Rotary projects. And if we're not including it in your packet, email me and I will certainly send you a copy of the things I have. So now, after you've started with the community, the next key is encouraging local ownership. A true sign of a project's success is when community members embrace the project as their very, very own. Empowering community members to assess their needs and plan projects that address them leads to the most effective projects and the ones with the most sustainable outcomes, because that's what we're looking for, is sustainability. The process also helps to identify key community members who can help pioneer lasting improvements. I would call these the local champions. And every grant needs 1, 2, 3, or maybe even 10 champions. But if you get local champions on the ground, wow, you are way ahead of the game, because they can see the benefit that it would provide for their community members. Now, another key to sustainability is to provide training. A project's success depends on people. Really, it does. By providing training, education, and community outreach, you strengthen beneficiaries' ability to meet the project objectives. Collaborate with local organizations to provide this training, because we don't know what all they need, but the local organization you're working with can certainly be a great instrumental help. Training plans are a requirement for almost every single global grant, and many people forget them. And then at the end, when you think you're submitted and you're done, ready to go, RI, your consultant out there will say, well, what about those training plans? So be thinking about them, and also when preparing them, use the format provided by Rotary, and we'll get that to you as well. Along with providing training, buying local is significant for the ongoing life of a project. If you can purchase equipment and technology from local sources whenever possible, it makes kind of that availability thing not a real issue. And spare parts, of course, if they're available locally, that's a real asset as well. Now, that doesn't always happen, but if it's available, buy locally. And then build capacity so that community members can operate, maintain, and repair the equipment on their own. And that goes back to that training component. So if they're trained to be able to do those, simple or maybe more complex repairs, think how good they would feel about, yeah, don't worry about it. I can handle that. Now me, I can't plug in a thing without getting a shock. But let's move on to funding. And if you can, finding local funding can really go a long way in the success of a project. Getting funding from local governments, hospitals, companies, and other organizations integrates your project into that community, and it supports the project's long-term success. And finally, on this little grid, measuring your success is key to the project. First, gather the data before you begin your project so you know what you're starting with, so you can determine those things you're beginning with, and then include clear, measurable outcomes in your project plan. Decide how you collect the data throughout your project and afterwards. And this is where maintaining a strong relationship with the community can help you collect the data and also address any issues that come to light as the project moves along. Now, all of these practices are key to a successful project, and they all are required, got that, required by the Rotary Foundation in the global grants process. In your application, you'll explain how your project will include each and every one of them. And there's a document out there that I'll tell you, I go back to it again and again, and I'll say, oh, I didn't know about that. I guess I forgot about it. So it's a great resource, and we're including it. It's called Terms and Conditions for Rotary Foundation District Grants and Global Grants. And it really is packed with information as you get more into the nitty-gritty of your project. It's an excellent, excellent resource. So you'll be getting a copy of that. So Kyle, back to you.
Thanks, Margie. And as Margie mentioned, we'll be sending a lot of documents out to you. I think there's 8 or 10 different documents that we'll be sending as part of kind of a packet after the meeting, which will have a template of the needs assessment, a template of the application, the terms and conditions documents, the just basically most anything that you may need from that perspective. So in the grants management seminar and earlier, we've mentioned Rotary's areas of focus and how we make an impact in each of those areas. Global grants support sustainable activities that are aligned with Rotary's 7 areas of focus and will produce results that address community needs. These areas encompass some of the world's most critical humanitarian issues. And I'd like to ask incoming District Rotary Foundation team leader, Ed Merrick, to help share a little bit more about the 7 areas. Ed.
Thank you, Kyle. And we'll jump right into it. And I think this one is the key. This is what really, in my opinion, Rotary is all about, promoting peace. We train adults and young leaders to prevent and mediate conflict and foster understanding within and across cultures. Fighting disease. We educate and equip communities to stop the spread of life-threatening diseases and improve and expand access to low-cost and free healthcare in developing areas. Providing clean water. We support local solutions to bring clean water, sanitation, and hygiene to more people every day. Saving mothers and children. We expand access to quality care so mothers and their children can live and grow stronger. Supporting education. We strengthen the capacity of communities to support basic education and literacy, reduce gender disparity, and increase adult literacy. Growing local economies. We carry out projects that enhance economic and community development and create opportunities for productive work for young and old. And finally, protecting the environment, brand new in July 2021, coming up here. Rotary members are tackling environmental issues the way they always do, coming up with projects, using their connections to change policy, and planning for the future. Kyle?
Thanks, Ed. So how did the 7 areas of focus come into play with global grants? Obviously, your project must be within an area of focus. Don't be an overachiever. Choose the one area where you can have the most impact, and this should be an outcome that comes from your needs assessment. The Rotary Foundation strives to process grants efficiently, and they ensure the quality of a grant-funded project, and that's why it has to align with one of those areas of focus. Utilizing the areas of focus policy statements, getting acquainted with them, utilizing them will help you plan your project. They'll help you understand your area of focus, and it will help you get your grant approved. And the policy statements help figure out which of your activities are eligible. Ask yourself this: will the activity help achieve the goals of this grant? One example of an activity that we thought would fit nicely into several areas of focus a number of years ago was building stoves or indoor stovetop projects. By reading the area of focus policy statements, it was found that they aren't eligible for global grants. Why? We're not totally sure there, but it's a good way to bring that advice to review what is eligible and ineligible from each area before jumping in and planning your project. Rotary International has provided us with guidelines for each area of focus. All global grant activities are required to align with the goals of an area of focus. These guidelines state the specific goals for each area. The activity should have a direct impact in that area selected, and don't only focus on the outcomes, concentrate on the main activities as well. Look for capacity building, training, and educational opportunities that will help make your grant more sustainable. And all grant requests must comply with the policy statement related to the intended area of focus. Most importantly, the foundation staff looks to see if your grant fits into one of the areas by using the policy statements. So becoming familiar with them is critical during all phases of your grant journey. We'll include a copy of the areas of focus policy statements in our document email with you. So global grants aren't designed to be done alone, and partnerships are not only important, but required. After all, isn't one of our core values building goodwill and better friendship? To apply for a global grant, 2 or more Rotary clubs must work together. The host sponsor is the club, is the partner in or near the community that's implementing the project. The international sponsor, typically that's us, works with the host sponsor, but is located outside of the host sponsor's country. The host sponsor's roles include initiating the project, conducting the community assessment, managing the project's implementation and budget, and receiving the project's funds. Why? They're on the ground. It's easier for them to do it there rather than thousands of miles away. The international sponsor, located elsewhere, provides financial assistance, technical support, and other guidance as needed, and performs other project tasks that can be done remotely and can participate in service during the site visits as well. Both sponsors must be qualified to do a global grant. That means that they have to be qualified with the Rotary Foundation, and the district of that host club has to be qualified as well. If you need help determining whether or not a district or club is qualified, let Margie and I know. We can help with that. Both clubs should be developing the project plan together, and they should be having committees that collaborate with each other during that process. And if they need to partner with a cooperating organization, an NGO, community group, governmental entity, both should be involved with that as well. And both should work to submit project reports in the Grant Center as well. Going back to the cooperating organizations, if you are working with a cooperating organization, both clubs and the organization must complete a cooperating organization memorandum of understanding too. Although other organizations and volunteers may play a large role, the product sponsors, the international partner, and the host club are ultimately responsible for the outcome of the project. So choose your partners wisely.
All right. Now let's talk about all that goes into planning your global grant. This plan should be developed by, as Kyle said, both sponsoring clubs collaborating together. I mean, that partnership is really key to making anything work well. Create a timeline of all the tasks that must be completed. Work as a team. The host and international sponsors each have a project committee of at least 3 Rotary members. Work together to make sure you are meeting the goals and more importantly, following your budget. Plan for continuity. You never know when something may happen and someone needs to drop out, so kind of plan for that. Another thing would be identify roles. Decide who will do what. Avoid conflicts of interest. Even the appearance of a conflict of interest can interfere with the success of a project. Don't be afraid to get expert advice. Qualified club members can be a resource. You could consult a civil engineer for a water project, for example. Cooperating organizations that have technical expertise and resources to help you with the project. There are also a number of Rotarian action groups or RAGs that can help. And there's a cadre within Rotary of technical advisors for each and every area of focus. So identify measurable outcomes. When you measure your success, you can show that you made a difference. And because RI wants the measure to be good and to show the good we do in the world, they have built it into our global grant requirements, as you can well imagine. And as you continue to plan your project, be thinking about creating a financial plan, develop a budget, and I think probably one of the critical things is raise those darn funds. The important tip would be to use the global grant application template. This template, and you'll get a copy of that, the template will walk you through all the information that you'll need to supply to RI. And it gives you a chance to prepare your responses before entering them into the online application. It also alerts you to areas where you may need to flesh it out a little more, or you really don't have a good answer for that, so you have to do a little more research on it. Work on answering all the questions clearly and concisely. Don't go on and on and on. Be crisp, clear, let the reader know exactly what it is you're doing and what you want to do. So, and then one of the beauties of this is you can cut and paste when you actually get to enter it online. You can, cut it out of your document and paste it into the RI application, and you don't have to retype it. So that's pretty good news, isn't it? So once you plan your project and it's approved, now that's the important thing, approved, now it's time to implement your project. Ta-da, party starts. It's crucial that you implement your project according to your project plan. So you can't go hog wild on something that is not part of your plan. As you carry out your project, keep reviewing your project plan with your project community and your team. And I think you can hear the word that I'm going to say next, communication, communication. Communication is the key to having a smoother implementation of the project. Global grant sponsors for humanitarian projects and vocational training teams must incorporate monitoring and evaluation measures also within the area focus section on the online grant application. So what is monitoring? Monitoring, according to RI, because remember, everybody's got their own definitions, is a continual process of collecting specific data, and it uses the measures and benchmarks you outlined in your grant application to track the projects of your grant. Now, what's evaluation? Evaluation is an assessment of how well your project is achieving those objectives. Now, steps for monitoring and evaluation plans are some of them are the following. Number one, establish clear project goals. Don't be an overachiever. Look at the goals section within each area of focus, and you can kind of pick one or two, but remember, if you pick 25 of them, you have to be able to measure up to all of those. So be clear, be choosy, and don't go crazy. Identify applicable project-specific measures. And like I said, add only measures that clearly link to specific goals within your project. Establish baseline data and methods that you'll use to collect that data. Submit the plan as part of the online application. And then as you're collecting the data during the project and monitoring the process, you will be evaluating that data and submitting those results when you complete your report to the Rotary Foundation. So there's a reason you're collecting all this, is because at some point in time you have to pony up and deliver it. But now this really is where your host partner or your cooperating organization and other key community people in in the area, that's where they can really lend a hand and make this thing go quite smoothly. So next thing would be you want to review the document Global Grant Monitoring and Evaluation Plan Supplement. They always have about 7 words in their titles. And it will be sent in your email packet for more information. But this document has a list of measures for each area of focus. Now, the environment does not have a lot of this available yet, but I'm suspecting it's going to be coming shortly. So don't get excited if your stuff doesn't have it yet. It's just not available. But as soon as it is available, we'll get it to you, okay? So at any rate, this document has a list of measures for each and every area of focus. But the important thing is you're going to find a glossary of Rotary Foundation standard measures that explain exactly what each word in a measure means. For example, adult. Well, what does that mean to you? Well, to Rotary, it's any individual over the age of 18. So you want to make sure if you're using a word that the glossary with the definition in the glossary gives you how Rotary International wants it used, that it's following into that same pattern. And you might think of monitoring and evaluation as a circle. Okay, first of all, you monitor and evaluate. You resolve, you learn, and you share. Because if you don't share it, what good is it? Okay, you know, if you keep it under, it's just like our light. If we keep it under a barrel, it does us no good. So now let's move on to one of my favorite subjects that drives everybody crazy, financial transparency. Financial transparency is the key to any one project. The financial management plan that you develop during the project planning helps you to keep track of grant funds, and it promotes transparency to everybody involved. And more importantly, it saves our, safeguards against any misuse. And that does happen occasionally, but boy, we don't want it to happen on District 5960's watch. And also good financial management facilitates the reporting, because remember, you have to report on this. You open a bank account that is used solely for receiving and dispersing those grant funds. And one thing we found out, and I know Brad is on the call, but they were trying to transfer funds from an African country, from the Republic of the Congo. And anyway, the bank did not have its own SWIFT code, which is SWIFT code, and there was all kinds of problems. So if possible, and it's not always a problem, of course, but if it has its own SWIFT code, it's much more easily, funds can be transferred more easily within certain countries. So anyway, that's something to bear in mind. And grants are not intended to produce interest income for the clubs. So it's not a place where you collect all this money and then you keep it in there for 2 years because you're getting great interest, you know? That is not the purpose of it. So keep the grant funds in a low interest or a non-interest bearing account. And that you'll find in the terms and conditions. So it's not something we made up here. Some of the other things of importance that you need to remember, not that your mind isn't already spinning, but we have to follow local laws, which are not like the laws in Minnesota or Wisconsin. And we also have to figure out the transfer and the disbursement of funds. After your grant application is approved, your club must complete the payment requirements outlined in the approval notification. And you get 1 year to do that. So if you don't do it within a year, they'll call your funds back. And you think, well, why wouldn't people do that? Believe me, there's a variety of reasons. And one of our mentors could give you a whole horror story about it. So keeping good financial records, obviously, as we talked about, is super important. And retaining documents. We can't use the termite ate the documents anymore, okay? So you want to retain documents. Well, what might that include? It could include grant correspondence. It could include emails, beneficiary documentation, including the community assessment and the cooperating MOU, which that cooperating MOU, by the way, is not the same as the MOU you signed to qualify your club for the ability to do grants. Okay, it's a different deal. A little bit more involved, as you'll see. And then vendor documentation. You know, you're working with vendors supplying services or products. So keep quotes and contracts, and obviously read those contracts very carefully. And any grant related documentation, you know, receipts, invoices, bank statements, because believe me, they're going to ask for bank statements. So make sure you've got those available. Inventory and photos. Photos tell a great story. So, you know, if your people on the ground can take pictures as things move along, what a great way. And besides that, we want to be able to use them at any Rotary Foundation events we have to celebrate the good work that you're doing in the world. But most importantly, you will need them for the reports to Rotary International. Now, there are reporting requirements, and a project report is due 12 months from receiving the first grant payment and every 12 months after that until the project is completed. The reports will ask for information on all aspects of your project as well as its outcome, and that's where the measurement and the monitoring on all of that will come into play. So Rotary asks for these grant reports not only to ensure good stewardship, because that's what we're all about, but also to show us or to show others how we can change communities for the better. So it's an ability for us to toot our horn, if you will. And unlike the district grants, which are emailed, the reports which are emailed to me and your mentor, global grant reports are submitted to Rotary International and they are online. They do not come to the district. So Kyle, back to you.
Perfect. Thanks, Margie. Last Rotary year, we instituted some new global grant approval and progress guidelines in our district. Over the past several years, we were seeing a few things happening. First, grants weren't moving very quickly, so our DDF wasn't being put to the best use. In a few cases, we had committed DDF to grants that not only took a long time, but ultimately fell through, so our DDF was reserved for no reason. Second, we haven't had any guidelines with regards to when clubs can apply for global grant DDF, so it had become first come, first served. Obviously, we didn't think that was a very fair way to be fair to all concerned. So the global grants team came up, or the grants team came up with a set of guidelines to alleviate these issues. And I'd like to share them now so we're all on the same page. The goal is to establish clear timelines and expectations for global grants to ensure fair allocation and prompt use of funds. This is applicable on any grant which a District 5960 club is the sponsoring club, or if a club in our district is committing $2,500 or more, and they're asking for at least $2,500 in DDF, which is district designated funds. And that's the money that comes back to us from the Rotary Foundation because of our giving to the annual fund. So if you are going to, if your club is going to match or to give money to a project that's being sponsored by a club in a different district, and you're giving $1,000, these don't apply. If you're giving $2,500 or more, these apply there. And if you are sponsoring it, they apply. We've also created a uniform deadline for grant submissions, so it's not that first come, first serve. All global grant proposals due by May 21st. This moved up from last year. Last year it was August 1st. We moved it up because as the Rotary Foundation has more and more requests for global grant funds from the World Fund is running out of money at times sooner and sooner. So we wanted to move our deadline up so that our clubs had a better chance of having their grant complete during that Rotary year. So May 21st is the deadline, and then all proposals will be presented for review at a special meeting on Friday, June 4th that afternoon. If you've been to a district grants meeting when we do all the proposals, it's very similar to that. It's just global grants instead. So with the proposals being due on May 21st, we also wanted to make sure that the proper amount of work has been put into grants to ensure they're in good shape, both in scope and the intent of the club. So here is the information that's required for the proposal by that 21st deadline. And if you don't quite have all of them, that's okay. We want to make sure you have most so it shows, but This is a long list, but some of them are pretty easy. Number one, making sure the host club is identified and that the contacts as part of their team, at least 2 of them are identified as well. It shouldn't, if you have your idea, it shouldn't be that difficult to identify the host club, hopefully. Are the host club and district qualified through the Rotary Foundation? We talked about that earlier, and we can help you with that if you're not sure. Making sure you have a needs assessment completed, because certainly you can't move forward with a grant without the needs assessment. We used to have some clubs that tried to do that. It doesn't work very well. The Rotary Foundation isn't going to like that. And so we want to make sure that you've completed that needs assessment and you have identified who the beneficiaries of the project are as well. Again, not real difficult, but it's needed. Which area of focus is this going to be under? Make sure that's identified. Talk about how the grant is going to be sustainable after the project is done. If there needs to be a training plan, if you're having if it's a project to install wells, well, how are the community members in the areas where those wells are going to be, how are they going to be trained to deal with the operation and any maintenance and repair that has to be done with those wells? You need to identify that. Preliminary budget, how much is it going to cost? What's that going to go to? The financing page, how much money is your club putting forth? What kind of money are you asking from other clubs? How much district designated funds or DDF are you requesting from us? And how much World Fund match do you want? And then also a fund dispersal plan. How are you going to spend the money out? Is it all just going to be given to that host club and let them deal with it? Or are you going to give it in chunks, so on and so forth there? So again, a long list, and we know you probably won't have every detail buttoned up in the next month and a half, but as many as possible to show that you're at least going forward there with intent and urgency. That's the main point of this, so that we know that you are committed. So if we're giving that DDF out, that it's being taken care of. So along with establishing the uniform submission date, we've also put together a progress reporting timeline to ensure the grant is moving along. Now, Margie talked about the progress reports at the Rotary Foundation level, which is 12 months after you get your money and then every 12 months after that. These are different progress reports, okay? These are internal to us to make sure that things are going along, because without guidelines, the process tends to slow down unnecessarily. So these guidelines should help create a sense of urgency to get towards completion. We've seen in the past that, you know, when it's open-ended, people put it on the back burner and don't necessarily work on it. So it can be months or over a year until things are done. So that's why we put these in place. But the deadlines, October 1st, the application should be fully entered in the grants portal in draft status. So you at least have a global grant number, and you've raised at least 25% of the funding that is needed from your club or other clubs to go forward. January 1st, application and authorization status, or authorizations needed status. That means you've finished the application and you've submitted it for authorizations from the pertinent clubs, the districts, both the district foundation team leader and district governor in any districts that are providing DDF. That's what that means. You've had commitments for 100% of the funding. You know that you have the funds for the project, because obviously if you don't, well, there's some issues there. And then by April 1st, we have Rotary Foundation approval, meaning that 100% of the funding is complete and all of the foundation questions are successfully answered. After you submit the application, they're going to ask you some questions, or the foundation asks some questions there potentially, and that's what it means by getting all those successfully answered. So it has been approved at that point, not just submitted. Okay? So you may think that all these deadlines are strict, but we want clubs to be conscious of moving the grant forward as quickly as possible. You'll notice by April 1st, the grant needs to be approved. That would be April 1st of 2022. That doesn't mean the work needs to be completed. It just means that you have essentially 9 months to complete the application and get the project approved. by working diligently, this should be able to be accomplished. And so what happens if you miss one of those milestones we shared on the previous page? Well, if you miss that April 1st milestone, your DDF will be revoked and you have to start the process over again with a new grant application. And along the way, if you haven't provided the progress reports to us and we're starting to get worried about where things are, that may result in revocation earlier. And don't worry, the grants team has discretion to provide extensions. This year, very few of our grants were able to get all the way through that approval process by now because of the fact that there's a pandemic going on globally. It took longer to get things both planned and get responses from other districts. That's okay. As long as you are able to show in those progress reports that we are working on things, this is why it's not done yet, that's okay. Failure to provide a progress report basically is showing you haven't done anything. Well, if that's the case, then we don't want our DDF held up for too long there. As for ongoing reports, and we touched on this a little bit, but these are required by the Rotary Foundation. The ongoing reports, again, are the ones required by the foundation once your grant has been approved. If you're delinquent on a Rotary Foundation report, your club will not be eligible to sponsor a new grant, either district or globally. Now, because of the timing, don't get concerned about this. Because of the timing, this really means that you're about 2 years behind on a report. So just make sure that things are going the right way. And from a DDF allocation standpoint, since all grant proposals will be reviewed at the same time, it will make it smoother for the grants team to allocate the requested DDF to your proposals. Now, during the grants management seminar, I mentioned an issue that we've had over the last several years on the district grant side of things. And actually, it came into play last year on the global grant side of things as well, in that we've had more requests for grant funds than what we've had available. So we've had a shortfall. If there's a shortfall, we try to be as fair to all concerned as possible in allocating our DDF. And the grants team uses a matrix for this calculation. You probably saw this slide at the grants management seminar as well. What goes into it? Number one, the amount of club giving to the annual fund per capita for the past 3 years. Per capita is important because a club with 150 people versus a club with 20 people, obviously, if we just measured on the full amount, that's not fair. Per capita measurement, absolutely fair there. So the more obviously a club gives to the foundation, the more money we have to utilize, so we want to reward that. Number two, how are you participating in other clubs' global grants? The more we participate with other clubs, the more you're going to be rewarded. Number three, we want clubs to come forward for the first time for global grant or district grant ideas. So we're going to look at it and kind of we're going to rank them in inverse order from that perspective. So if you haven't done a grant in a long time from a global grant perspective, you're going to rank higher there than a club that's doing grants each year. And finally, the grants team evaluation of the project, we want to have some subjective element to decide which projects may have the most impact, because all grants aren't treated equally. So just like on the grants management seminar side of things, how best can you get the most funding possible if we have a shortfall? Make sure your club is giving to the Rotary Foundation, make sure you're participating in other clubs' global grants, and make sure you have a significant, impactful project. So we've covered a lot of information in a short amount of time today, and there are, don't worry, you don't have to go through the process alone. There are plenty of tools and resources that we have to assist you. As we mentioned throughout this workshop and the grants management seminar, when you first bring an idea forward, you'll be assigned a mentor. Our mentors are part of our grants team, and they'll be working alongside you during the grant to make sure your process goes as smoothly as possible and your application is put together the right way. And we have 8 of our mentors on the call here today. Jeff Harnley from the Red Wing Club, Judy O'Fallon from the Rotary Club of Rochester, Larry Probst from Woodbury, Glenn Bowers from Arden Hills Shoreview, Valdi Stephenson from St. Paul, Brad Kirscher from Roseville, and Cindy Carlson, who will be joining us again as a mentor starting in July. So we're glad to have Cindy back. And then our district governor nominee, Dale Quigley, who has also served as a mentor for several years. So I think I got everybody there, unless somebody jumped on and I didn't put them on my list. Second, we have a district international service chair that can help research any special requirements in a country, help identify a club or a district on the ground that may be able to assist, and also to provide feedback based on a particular country or area, because we may have had experience in countries in the past, and we know what things may affect things positively or negatively. We'll just put it that way. Our DISC, as it's called, District International Service Chair, is Jim Hunt from the White Bear Lake Club, and he can also communicate with other DISCs from around the world. There's kind of a network there, very valuable for global grants. Our quick reference guide provides a lot of good information about the grants process. I think you should have a copy of this, and I would recommend reviewing it before you get started with the process so you know what to expect as well. And we'll be sending that out as one of the documents afterwards. And I mentioned the mentor a minute ago, but it's more than just having a mentor. You have the entire team of mentors working together behind the scenes to review your project and make sure that it's put together as well as possible. So you may get help from several mentors along the way. Another key part of the global grants process is Rotary Foundation staff. Since the grant is managed by the Rotary Foundation, that means staff people will review the grant. Initially, they'll potentially ask for additional info or clarify certain things. Don't get discouraged by this. They're trying to help make sure the project fits within Rotary Foundation guidelines and has the most impact possible. Along the way, you'll be able to ask them for guidance regarding the implementation and reporting of the grant as well. Let me stress, they want the grant to be successful. So their work helps to not only accomplish your goals, but make sure that the Rotary Foundation is spending their money wisely as well. There are a lot of online resources out there as well at our district site and rotary.org that you can utilize. And as a reminder, we'll be emailing you several of those key documents after this workshop. Margie?
Yeah, and I would like to recommend that, you get all these attachments. If you can just move them and paste them into an area where you could look at them later, I think that would be, really a great idea. In fact, that's what I do. All right, now let's recap. We went through a lot of stuff, some principles of a successful grant. And of course, all our grants are going to be successful. The needs assessment, the most successful projects work with the community. Did you get that? Work with the community to identify a need, figure out how best to address it, and to discover what resources are available within that community. It's amazing what the community itself can do if they're given the opportunity. Organized implementation plan. Use the results of your community assessment to start your plan. A good plan will make sure that the tasks are completed on time and that, more importantly, none of them are forgotten. A good plan clearly lists who is responsible for each task, because if nobody's responsible specifically for a task, usually it never gets done. Frequent partner communication and teamwork. Create a regular schedule to communicate current grant activity. And, if you just keep contacting people, pretty soon they're going to be saying, well, I see this, or I read this, or maybe this would help. You never know where these wonderful, great ideas to help assist with the project are going to come from. Sustainable projects will have measurable and lasting outcomes for the community. Start early. You cannot, and I believe you to say again and again, you cannot add sustainability at the end of a project. You have to plan it in. Proper stewardship. All project sponsors are ultimately responsible for the outcome of the project. Keeping good records is a key to proper stewardship. And the grant results promoted within the community and your club. And, don't forget to celebrate. the milestones along the way. You don't have to wait until the final deed is done or stone is cast. Celebrate all the little things to keep your people engaged. And, you know, life is a journey, and for each thing that comes along, I don't think we celebrate enough. Maybe some people celebrate more than others, but you've done great work to make the world a better place, and don't be afraid to toot your horn. Figure out how to do that. Already, the Faribault Club, and I'll have to say kudos to Dick, he put got an article in the paper about what you guys are planning to do in Cambodia to help solve some clean water problems. Great. I mean, just keep doing that and get in front of the community, because you never know where another sponsor may come from with deep pockets to help fund your project. So Kyle, that's my tips for principles of a successful grant.
Thanks, Margie. As we wrap up here, we are going to move to our second attendance check. So please enter your name and club into the chat box. And we do have somebody that is calling in as well, a 507 area code that ends in 056. If you could unmute and just tell us who you are too, that would be great.
That is Sam from Faribault.
Perfect.
I'm aware he's calling in. Sam Oak.
That's a minute ago I wonder if that's Sam, and seeing as that I didn't see him. So hi, Sam. All right. So we'll just before we're done here, just a quick wrap up. Obviously, the importance of giving. You know, if we don't give to the Rotary Foundation, we don't have the money to do the wonderful work that we do afterwards. So please, not only do a great grant to help, you know, spend the money of the Rotary Foundation, but be a champion within your club. Encourage members to give and use the grant. It's kind of a cycle too. Use your project as a catalyst to get more people engaged in the foundation as well. Show that, like Margie said on the previous slide, you know, the more you are able to promote the grant within the community and within your club, the more engaged your members are going to be. Explain to them, because of what we do with the Rotary Foundation, we were able to do this project. So please make sure on that part and keep pushing that, because the more we have, the more we can do. Getting qualified, it's obviously important to be qualified for a grant. So make sure that you are doing what you need to do there. And we did have, I did have a question a little bit ago here. The memorandum of understanding and the district addendum, are they required by 521? Yeah, I would think that would be a good time to do that, as well. So try to get that in by May 21st with the signatures of your 21-22 president and president-elect. And if you need any help with a DocuSign signature because you're not meeting in person, reach out to me and I can help you coordinate that. Margie, any other key takeaways that you should that you would like to focus on at all?
No, but I understand from a chat that I just looked at that there's people that have raised their hands with questions. But I would like to just say one comment that we didn't talk about, and partners for raising funds. You know, if any clubs are on this grant or on this seminar and they have some extra funds that, you know, they want to know more about what a club is doing for their global grant, be sure to, you know, let's have a spot where we can get that information out. And I think on the 4th of June would be a great opportunity for people to, you know, join in and say, yeah, I'd like to have my club invest as a partner in that particular project. So even though you're not doing a project this year, there's always time to get on the bandwagon, because all of those funds are needed to do that good in the world. So
absolutely. So with that, we'll kind of skip the last couple slides here. So there's the questions, there's us, and then I will stop sharing. And Cindy, yes, you have had your hand up, and Go ahead and you should be able to unmute yourself. There you go. And ask away.
All right. One of the earlier slides, I don't know if you can flip back to it. It's the one about partnerships.
I can.
It shows kind of
probably.
roles and responsibilities of the various partners.
Yeah. Let me find it.
Are you going to ask about the other club, the partner club, the host club having the funding?
Yep.
Yeah, that
Well,
doesn't
what I-
always work. Yeah, go
Yeah,
ahead, Cindy.
so the point that I was going to make there is that this is kind of a guide as far as showing the breakdown of who's going to do what. And while the assessment is critical that that be conducted in large measure by the efforts of the host sponsor, managing the project and receiving and dispersing the funds, that is a dance. That has to be figured out between the partners based upon their various skills and all of that sort of thing. So it's not uncommon for the international sponsor to have a large role in that. And then, excuse me, and then, divvying funds up along the way. So I just wanted to make that point there.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because sometimes a partner may want to handle all the funds, and you're just not feeling comfortable with that. And as the grant sponsor, we have every right to handle it ourselves. And I think, Brad, you probably had some great experience with that, correct? Brad Kirscher is one of our many expert volunteer mentors.
As far as deciding who's in charge of the funds, I actually, when we had an approval, I sent it. Are you able to hear me?
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay. Yeah, when we had an approval, I sent an email out, and I was a little bit nervous, to be honest, because I wanted to make it clear from the very beginning that the funds would be handled over here, and we were going to make progress payments as the project went forward. But the response I got back was, that's exactly how we do it over here. And we're working on an implementation plan with the engineer on when the progress will be done, so that ahead of time, approximately when we're going to show you the proof that it's done and ask for the draw.
So like Cindy said, it depends. And that goes with part of choosing your partner wisely. And that trust factor, you truly have to have a trust in, who you're dealing with. So any other questions?
I don't have a question, but I have a comment.
Sure, comments are welcome.
When you were talking about the financial piece and making sure that each of the members of the team have a specific role, I think that is real important. And I don't think we, and at least in my experience, have always done the best job of that. And a lot of responsibility tends to fall on one or maybe two people. So I think having a good, well-rounded team where there are very specific roles is good. And the other thing that I would emphasize is to build in some redundancy in roles. Because if someone drops out or drops the ball, it's a problem. And that was just an experience that, again, we had with our grant as it relates to the financial reporting. So if only one person is managing that, if that person isn't able to continue with their responsibilities, someone needs to pick it up. And if they haven't been intimately involved all along the way, it's very difficult to piece it together. So I would just say the individual roles are important, and redundancy is every bit as important as well.
And that could be part of that communication to make sure that everybody knows, at least something about all the different facets of any one grant, because you're dealing with a lot of money, and it's money that Rotarians have donated or other people have donated or clubs. And, as a Rotarian, I want my money going to good things that are well managed, not just, flying around the country doing a half-assed or I better not say that. That's a job.
That's okay. I have another question or comment.
Sure.
Okay, well, a few years ago with global grants, it was such that let's say, for instance, I was the person that was authorized to work in my Rotary on that application. Other people from my club would not be able to directly work in that application. I was kind of like the designated person.
That's true
So
today
has
too.
that been changed so
No.
that more than one Rotarian can have their hands in it? Yeah. See, that works counter to the point that Joanne was just making, that it would be nice to have some redundancy, because if the person who's not able to, for whatever reason, do what they need to do to update or do reporting, golly, that would be an improvement if RI or RTF were to change that.
Totally agree.
Yeah, but I have seen nothing that says they're going to change it or anything like that. Now, if it's our grant, like in lieu of you guys, I can also go in and help assist with any kind of changes that somebody needs to make. But yeah, you're right. It's almost like you
ideal.
got to be sitting next to each other going, okay, well, now let's do this, or whatever the case might be. But anyway.
Natalie has her hand up. Natalie, go ahead.
Thank you. It was mentioned earlier about having the local community help with fundraising. And that could be asking the local government or a hospital or something. I think those were the examples. Is there any requirement around an amount or a percentage, or, is it us that does that outreach in the local community, or are we asking our host partner to do some fundraising?
Well, okay, first of all, it used to be that a host club had to put in minimum $100. A number of years ago, they took that requirement away. The host club, because many times, if you think of $100 here, it's not that much to us, but to them, it might be a half a year's, income. But at any rate, they do not have to put any money in. But it's really good if they are capable, because often in Rotary, you've got really the, high income people in the area. If they can, if you can get money from one of their foundations or their companies or whatever to help with the project in their very own community, I mean, that's really a good investment. And it's also a great tie-in that the project is going to continue on, after we leave with our funding. But does that answer, Natalie, that the host club they're encouraged to, but they are not required to put any money into the project?
So as far as asking the local government or a business to contribute outside of the club, the host club, would that be a responsibility of the host club?
I would think it would, because they know who they're asking and who the movers and shakers in the community are. So,
right.
Yeah. And also,
Just another responsibility to make sure we're clear on early on in the partnership.
Yeah, that's and like writing down those things. And so each one agrees, because how we phrase things isn't always so, in another country, they would take that information. They might take offense at it. So you want to make sure we're, really looking at local norms and customs and how they do things. And, this isn't Minnesota or Wisconsin.
Judy has her hand up. Go ahead, Judy. Can you mute? There you go.
That was a good question, though, from the furthest one. That reminded me, you mentioned that now a new rule from Rotary International is that the clubs have to provide at least a minimum of, what was it, 25% of the budget? What was it that you told us? Yeah, at the beginning, that's one of the new things. That
10,000 and something, wasn't it? For
yeah, our new. Okay, wait. Yeah. Our new thing. Kyle, do you want to cover that? Yeah, the Rotary International. Okay, we did that in the grants management. Maybe we should carry it over to this one. but it is our last seminar, so woo-hoo-hoo for that.
Yeah.
What? I'm still
Oh,
looking.
no. Here we go. Okay.
All right.
This is
Yep.
the progress reporting guidelines.
No, I'm not
No,
talking
no,
about
no,
our
no.
progress report. No.
No, we're talking about that, okay, Rotary International, starting July 1, will only match district DDF, not clubs. Remember now, this year, they changed it. They will match only district DDF 1-to-1.
Right.
Starting July 1, 2021, they will match 0.8 to 1.
Yeah, I'm glad we knew that.
So to get to a $30,000 minimum budget, which is minimum, and most projects are more than that, clubs in our district have to donate at least $10,715. But remember, if you get clubs from anywhere around the world to donate, we will match if funds are available, because it's competitive and you can see that. We will match dollar for dollar up to 25,000.
Yeah.
So we'd put in 25, but RI would only match that at 80%, Judy.
Right. Yeah, I understood all those. That's what's been going on right now. Actually,
No, that's new.
I've been working on the ones that are coming up, and I know about the 80%. But what is concerning me was that whether the clubs were going to have a minimum. The clubs could be collecting, like Faribault was asking. Maybe there was a local, like Mayo Clinic, say. Here.
Well, that's not club dollars.
That's right. It is not club dollars. And so was there any kind of a problem about our getting some of our money coming in that we're going to need more money than what they're going to get from the matches? Is there a problem about how much there can be coming from outside Rotary resources?
Well, okay, to answer that question, RI frowns on that. We know clubs do that. They'll have a district, whoever donate money to the club for the club to use for a project. In the terms and condition, and not the second or anything, but I could find that page and, send that off to you, say, look at this, because what they want other outfits to discourage, okay, say Mano a Mano wants you to do a project down in Bolivia, and they're willing to give the St. Paul Club $50,000 to do that. RI frowns on that. Now, obviously, that can happen and we would never know about it, but RI does frown on that kind of a transaction. Does that answer your question? And we as a district only match club dollars, but they can be clubs from anywhere in the world, other districts, whatever.
But yet I know that almost all the clubs, almost all of the projects I've ever seen, there have been some money that's been coming in from like the town or something else that they have helped to put together the money for that would to make up for after all the matches are done. There's still more.
Judy, let me send you that site, and then you can make your own personal ethical decision on how you want to operate with that. Okay.
Okay. Well, I wonder if there's something. It sounded like it was something that you were adding this year. That was the way you put it.
Oh, no, probably not.
That was the way I
might have misphrased.
Okay.
Remember, I'm a volunteer just like you guys, so I can maybe think I'm saying the right thing, but obviously I can screw up too. So be sure to call me on the carpet on that.
Okay.
All right.
Any other questions? All right. Well, seeing none, I don't think. Going once, going twice, I think we're good. So thanks everybody for attending this Global Grants Workshop, and we hope that you took away information that will help you in the grants process and that you're looking forward to creating positive peace in the world through your project. Homework, remember that please make sure to complete the memorandum of understanding and the district addendum that you were sent and that you'll be sent again to make sure you're qualified for a 21-22 grant. And we'll be sending probably tomorrow the information, all of the attachments, so you have those as well for reference. And thank you, and have a good rest of the day.